Hope everybody is doing well this morning. We're going to get started. So, I wanted to pop us off this morning by explaining why what we're going to go through is so important. Even though it's just simple fundamentals, the basics, the foundation. The reason why, Sheila's able to go out there and earn 15,000 in a month, and Sophia almost 10,000, is because they have great core fundamentals in gathering information. The reason people are so afraid of folks that are in sales or to get into sales is because they think sales is pushy. Sales equals aggressive. Sales equals manipulative. When in reality, it's the complete opposite. If you're a good sale, first of all, nothing pays in this whole world better than the life of a good salesman or woman. But good sales is not, it's the complete opposite of pushy. It's gathering information from somebody, figuring out where the problem lies, and creating a solution in return. And that is what we're going to go through today. Mainly Shondell is going to go through, again, gathering data. And if you guys can master this, it's a sequence. It's not just putting a whole bunch of things on paper. It's a specific sequence of things where if you do it right, when you get to the end of the appointment or closing, basically, it's seamless. It really, really is. So I want you guys to pay close attention to Shondell this morning. She's the best at this, the most systematic person in our hierarchy at this. No one better to learn from. But before we get started, I wanted to highlight Keisha Wright in New York. Went out there this week and passed her life insurance exam. Why is this so special? Because number one, we don't have anyone in our hierarchy other than Gabe, who's an RVP in New York, that really knew the system. She went out there and learned it all by, we learned it together. She failed 4 times and passed on the 5th. That's a warrior. That's a fighter. That's someone that's a future regional vice president. So I wanted to really give her spotlight. I mean, I'm so unbelievably proud of her tenacity, and she deserves to be on this call with Lisa Jones this upcoming week. Great job. Great job. So take it away, Shondell.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction, and great job, Keisha. We're super proud of you for going out and getting that done. So yeah, we're going to go through data collection. Again, this is week 2, covering the basics here. And so Shaq definitely wanted me to go through this again with you guys, because when it comes to mastering collecting data, you want to get really good at it. And so this is something that he just wants everybody to kind of digest and understand, and it's new. And so I know a lot of people have their ways of going through the appointment and collecting their information, and wherever they were collecting it, whether it was electronically or on paper. I know beforehand I had like a previous data collection that we had, or a notebook paper. People have a notepad or a Padfolio, and you're just writing down as much information as you can. So this is just a great way where you could just have everything systematized in one place. Also, when you're training people, which is the purpose of recruiting and getting on these training appointments, is getting people competent and independent. By using this data collection, you can have your trainees, anybody that's working with you, learn how to go through that exact same process that you're going through, follow along with it. Like I have a printed out copy, and you can literally follow along. Everything is printed out on a couple pages here for you to have it. And then just being organized in business, guys, like having, like, I know I'm like probably extreme, but I have all of my folders categorized by month of all of the data collections that I've collected and information that I've gotten from clients. But think about it, guys, we're financial advisors. We're working with people. We're attempting to get massive checks. Like Sophia had a $1.2 million transaction. She's not writing down information that she's getting from her client on a napkin or a piece of paper. She's getting specific details to be able to go through that process with people. So this is extremely important, guys, and we're going to run through it again. So when we start off, obviously you want to build rapport. Yeah, so at the beginning of every single appointment, you want to build rapport, get to know the client a little bit, write on the data collection. It has spots for you to write in the trainee's name, when you did the appointment with the client, and then you find out their information. Yeah, their name, that's obviously important, but then their occupation, what do they do for work? That's important as well, because if you know what they do for work, then you know kind of what products they have. If they work with the government, you'll have an idea of, okay, great, well, they may have a TSP, or they're gonna have a FEGLI, Federal Employee Group Life Insurance. If it's state government, it might be slightly different, a 401k, 403b, could be 457 as well, and they're definitely gonna have group insurance. If they work for a corporation, now you know that they're gonna have a 401k and group insurance. But if somebody's self-employed, they say, oh yeah, I run my own business, then you know they're probably not gonna have anything provided through an employer. They're gonna either have their own private insurance, or they're gonna have something like an IRA for their retirement, or a SEP IRA, so on and so forth. So knowing what they do for work is great for building rapport, but it's also extremely important so you know where you're headed once you get to that part of the presentation. So that's there. We have a spot, obviously, for states now. We are doing business all across the country, and you want to know where they're at. And that's also important too, because you want to make sure that once you start doing a lot of business in a state, you need to make sure you're licensed there. So on the insurance side, on the investment side, you have to be licensed at every single point in any state. So if I meet a client and they're like, oh, I have $500,000 in an old 401k, but they're in Texas, hey, I gotta make sure I go and get my Texas securities license. So extremely important now that we're crossing these borders and everyone's not local, to know where your clients are at as well, for you and your trainees to understand that process. So that's there, but it's a great spot for you to write in all of the information there, knowing what they do. Then when you get to the next part of the presentation, obviously it's setting down the table of expectations. So at this situation, we're letting them know what we're expecting throughout, excitement, value, partnership. And there's a critical question on this page that we need to ask every single client. And it's right at the end of the slide, where we say, hey, has anyone ever done any financial work for you professionally in the past? And so on our data collection here, that question is there. And as I'm going through this, guys, you're going to see that all of the critical questions that we asked throughout the presentation is on this data collection. So as long as you're following it and you ask the questions, it's going to lead up to the close. So have you had any financial work done in the past? Why is this important? Because, hey, if they have had something done, whether they've had an advisor or they just went to the bank and opened up a CD at the bank, somebody just helped them out with debt, it's good to know what was done if they did have work done in the past. But if they say no, which is in a majority of the cases, then you want to ask, okay, well, so usually when we sit down with a family, one of these three reasons is why they haven't had any done work. They didn't see the need for it, didn't think they can afford it, or never got around to it. So then you check it off, and now you know. Then as we're going through, so yeah, you can fill it in. As we're going through the next parts of the presentation, obviously go through the statistics, and then we get to the mission statement. On here, I think this is something, and I don't think this has been trained on a lot, but I know I do it personally, but we go through the mission, explain a little bit about the story to the family, but of our company. But when it gets down to talking about being financially independent, I think it's critical to understand what that means to the client before you give them a definition. Because when I ask the client, hey, what does financially independent mean to you? I get so many different answers, guys. Like, it could be anything. It could be, oh, I just want to be debt free. Oh, I don't want to owe anybody. Oh, I want to be able to vacation and travel. I want to have money saved. I don't want to be paycheck to paycheck. I don't want to have to worry about bills. just anything. I want to be able to retire in the next 15 years or whatever the case may be. But it's a very open-ended question, and I think it's extremely important to understand what it means to that client, so later on you can readdress those things with them, right? And help them accomplish those goals. So obviously you can write down whatever the case may be. It also sets kind of the tone of how they feel about finances overall. I mean, if somebody's saying, oh, I don't want to be paycheck to paycheck, not have to worry about bill collectors or people calling me all the time, being worried, things like that, then you know that they're probably in a little tighter situation budget wise potentially, or they have a lot of debt that is kind of stressing them out. Some people are just extremely focused more so on investments. Then you know your conversation is going to be more so directed to that. So it's just extremely important to know that, I feel, as well. So let's continue on. One of the next critical slides throughout the presentation is the power of compound interest. So when we go through this, guys, obviously we want to provide education. We're teaching the families about compound interest and how that actually works and the benefit of it for us and for us growing money and investing and being able to even have the option to retire one day. But the main reason to this slide is actually not that. The main reason to this slide is to find out if the client is wasting money. And so when we go through the concept, before we go through, we always ask, hey, Josh, on a day-to-day, would you say, I mean, like, for example, I'll play it through. So most Americans, we spend a lot of money on extras, right? Non necessities. We like to shop out of convenience. So we stop at 7-Elevens, get our coffee every day from Starbucks, so on and so forth, right? So kind of play it down. And then he just asks us like, yeah, so on a day-to-day, Josh, how much do you think you spend on extras, right?
Like maybe $5, 7, 5 to maybe 10, 5 to 10.
Maybe 5 to 10, right? And so then they just throw out a number there, right? They don't know why you're asking, but once they throw out the number, then now that's important because now you break it down, and if it's $10 a day, hey, Josh, I mean, that's $300 a month, right? Especially if they say that $200 a month is a lot of money, and I forgot to ask that earlier. So we are going to ask ahead of time, is $200 a month a lot of money? They're going to say yes or no, and then we'll go into asking them about how much they're wasting. And so on the data collection, that is there because that's critical. Why is that critical? At the end of the presentation, if they do say, number one, that $200 is a lot of money, then you got to let them know that they're spending that same money somewhere else that's probably not in their best interest. But sometimes, let's say if they did say no and they just throw out a number, like Josh said, $10, right? And then the wife on top of that says, oh yeah, $15, easy every day. So then you calculate that. That's a lot of money going out on extras, guys. And when we sit down with families, our primary goal is to get to the point of protecting that family. If they have no coverage, if they have a terrible policy, which we're going to go into at the end of this presentation, Josh is going to cover that. But in that situation, we can't let clients walk away when they're telling us that, oh, they spend so much money on extras. But when it comes down to getting the check later on, and we say, hey, can you afford $25 to $50 a month, $50 to $75 a month, $100 a month to protect your family? And they say, oh, no, things are tight. My budget is tight. I don't know. I gotta wait. No, like, bring this back up. This is why we write this here, because, hey, I mean, and you don't do it in an absurd way or an annoying way or an arrogant way. You just bring it back up and say, hey, well, I mean, Josh, I mean, you have your fiance, and I mean, you guys have a home and things like that. And if anything, God forbid, was to happen to you, I mean, you have no coverage right now. So, I mean, wouldn't it make sense? Earlier, you said you spend like $10 a day. I'm not even asking for that. I mean, it could be maybe $1 a day, $3 a day, right? To protect your family. Do you think that would make sense? And you just have that conversation and put it into perspective for them. So that's critical, guys. That's why that's also there on the data collection. So next slide here, go through a couple slides. Obviously, we talk about income protection, all of that. But once we get here to the financial house, you want to know kind of what their priorities are. So we typically set the tone that the foundation is the most important. It's the strongest part of the house. If it's not there, the whole house can come crashing down. So we always paint that picture to let the clients know that's probably should be one of your choices. But I still ask. I'll ask the client, okay, out of these 4 areas, what are your top 2 priorities? And once we figure out what that is, then we can kind of address, and that can sometimes direct which way the presentation is going to go. Some trainers, just no matter what, whatever option that they pick, we always go into income protection. So it really depends. You don't have to change up your whole presentation style, but you do want to document what their choices are, so you address it. Why the psychology for me, why do I think that's important is because if, for example, somebody says debt and retirement, and then you just go into income protection and don't even address or talk about any of those other 2 areas, that client's like, well, why did you even ask me? Like, you're just trying to sell me something else. You're not even like trying to address any of the things that I'm interested in, right? So it's always good to have an idea of what their interests or concerns are at that time. Give some information. You don't have to have a full-blown presentation about those things, but address it and then get to the income protection, which is what we all want to eventually get to throughout the presentation. So when you ask on the data collection, that's the next line there. What would you say are your top 2 priorities? So you have somewhere to notate it and know what it is. Sometimes they pick the same things, sometimes they pick different things, the husband and the wife. So I think that that's a great spot to put it down there. Now, getting into insurance, as far as this, obviously we want to ask how much coverage the client has, and they're either going to say nothing or they're going to give us some numbers. And what I've been seeing is that a lot of times, probably, I don't know, 80 to 99% of the time, they have no idea how much coverage they have. And it's some roundabout number. It's not specific. They don't know, okay, yeah, we have $1 million of coverage. Okay, is it all through your job? Is it all through work? I mean, private? How much is on you? How much is on your wife? Is any on your kids? They don't know. A lot of times they just know how much coverage they have in general. Sometimes they don't even know how much they're paying either, right? So once we get to it, there is a page, the next page, which goes through the insurance quadrant. So you guys know, last time I didn't show it in total. So the first page has all of the information. I know my picture's gonna be really small in the video, but then it has retirement at the bottom, and then the carry back information. That's page 1. But when you get to page 2 is where the whole page is dedicated to the insurance quadrant. So if they have coverage, so on and so forth, this is the zoomed in page 2, right? So right at the top says how much coverage do you have? You put in the information that you gather from them. Now, when we say, okay, hey, these are the 4 scenarios that someone can be in regarding their coverage, once they tell you what they have, then you can check off those boxes there. And now that'll direct you to which scenario you need to go through listed on the data collection and write down any more information that you may need. So there we go. So usually the first area that we like to cover is group insurance. So if they do have group insurance, we want to go through, we want to kill group with the intent to kill, the title of our group today, right? You want to kill group. They should have absolutely no reason why they would want to keep their group insurance after you go through and kill that. So once you go through and reading through all of the fine print with them, letting them know they don't own it, there can be changes. They watch the video about the professor, the teacher in the school district and what happened in 11 days. Now they're feeling some type of way. And you want to ask them the most important question after you go through all of this and say, hey, well, when it comes to your family, how much risk would you want to take? And in most cases, many families will say, well, none. I want to make sure my family's protected. And then you go into the 2 closing questions that are on the slide here. So it's here on the data collection, but then it's also here on the slide. Can you see why it's so risky to solely rely on group insurance? Yes, I can. And can you see why we don't include it in our analysis? So we want to make sure that we're asking those questions and we get confirmations. If you get any type of iffy Well, I mean, no, maybe mine doesn't work like that, or something like that. You didn't kill it enough. You have to kill it to where they have no inch of comfortability of keeping that only. If they only have group insurance, if they have private insurance, then the tone might not be so intense, um, because they already have something else private outside of that. Then you got to address that. But if they only have group and they're super arrogant about their group and their group is the best group and it's going to take care of them, you got to make sure that you're killing it and you get these commitments before you can start moving forward. So that's group insurance, guys, and it's right there on the data collection. You can fill it in. Now you have the information. Now, after group, if they have group or they have no insurance, then obviously we'll go into the no insurance slide and you ask all of the questions listed here. So usually if you don't have any insurance, it's due to one of these three reasons: didn't see a need for it, didn't think you can afford it, or get around to it, right? You didn't see a need for it. Well, now Josh, based on everything that we went over, do you see a need? If you didn't think you can afford it, a lot of people think life insurance is a lot more expensive than it really is, but our job is to find the balance between what you need and what you can afford. Didn't get around to it. Well, great. I mean, we're here right now. I mean, and then you just continue moving on. So is protecting your family important enough that you'd be willing to begin setting aside some money each month to take care of this? Of course. If we could put together a program that would be affordable to you, is there any reason that you wouldn't implement that program? No. Great. Then you can move forward. I see these as other green lights throughout the presentation. So we talked about compound interest. We talked about what are their priorities. They agreed that group was risky. Now we're getting the commitment that it is important to them and there wouldn't be anything that would prevent them from moving forward. These are very important. So you want to make sure that you're documenting that as well as you're going through on the data collection. And so, like I said before, with group insurance, if they're not answering the right way when you ask these questions, then you got to go back and figure out what the issue is. You have to figure out what the real objection is. Is it money? What is it? Because we don't want to be in the business of being presenters. We don't want to just present forever and ever and ever and then never get any results. So we need to get these questions down and get the right answers so then we can know that we're going to get to a close either then or on a carryback, one way or the other. So that's the no insurance section. If they have a private policy, so Josh is going to talk about cash value today. If they have a private policy, we got to get the details about it as much as possible. I know we are not in person now where it'd be easy. They just bring it out and give it to us. We got to find ways to get it. But if they have a policy, if you guys click through the presentation, it comes up to these slides. Why did you buy your policy? For the protection, the investment, or both? If you were to change benefits, what would interest you the most? Lower cost, more coverage, better return. We find that almost everybody greatly benefits by allowing us to evaluate their existing insurance, even those with term. And our promise is that we'll never ask you to make any, to change any financial program if there's not a significant advantage and it's not obvious to you. So if it were possible that we could significantly improve your current life insurance program, like save you money and give you more coverage, do you have any emotional attachment to your current company or agent that would prevent you from making the change? And that's important because if there is an attachment, then it could potentially be an uphill battle. Depending on who it is, like for example, if it was like my parents, for example, then that's going to be a little tough for someone that I don't know that's just meeting me for the first time to be like, oh yeah, don't believe what your parents are doing and they're out to get you and they're ripping you off. You can't have those same conversations if it's somebody that they may care about or they've had a long time relationship with. So you got to make sure that you're not overstepping your boundaries. But if they say no, there's no emotional attachment, then hey, you're good to go. You can say what you can do. You can go in with the intent to kill that policy if it's a bad policy. But if there is some type of emotional attachment, you got to kind of figure out what it is and then just kind of like make sure that you're working your way through without being overly insensitive or combative to the person. And now you're just providing good information and good value so that they do see the doubt the doubt or the issues within the policy, so on and so forth. So that's important, guys, when they have a contract. So here we have an entire section for private insurance. And so with the private insurance here, it has all of the sections. So when did you get the policy? I don't know, 10 years ago. What type is it? When you bought it, what were the reasons? Those same questions that we just went over, they're all listed here for you to follow through and document what their answers were. Then once you figure out what type of policy they have, then like I said, you want to try to get as much information as possible. Last time I went over this, I said you can have them get their policy and just take pictures of it. I've had clients that sometimes are a little older, they don't really know technology and all that, so they literally hold like the policy up to the screen, and I'm like, hey, no, move it this way, move it that way, let me read it. Some clients, I just say, take the picture, like take a screenshot of it, take a picture of it, send it to me, I'll look over it right this second. I've gotten many clients that way. Sometimes they don't have the policy. So I say, hey, do you have online access? Oh yeah, I do. So then I say, hey, just log in, share your screen with me. I can tell you exactly what you need to look for so we can get these details. It's very, very rare that people know all of the information about their policy, but there's critical things that you want to ask about every type of policy that you run into, whether it's whole life, universal life, or even term, because a lot of this information that we have listed here is going to determine what we can do, what we can offer, and how we can potentially give them a better situation to be in. And sometimes people don't know if they do have cash value, if they have whole life or universal life. So if you don't have the policy, we have to get as much information as we can to determine which one it is. Sometimes if it's a lower premium, but they have a cash value, it may be universal life. This is extremely high premium, low coverage, then maybe now more so leaning towards whole life, right? If it's extremely cheap and they have a high amount of coverage, then it probably is some type of term, right? So when you look at it, you got to address those things. When did they get the policy? How long ago? Cash values, options, so on and so forth. But this is very detailed, guys, and you want to make sure you become an assassin and get this information, because this is how you're going to prove it to them that what they have is not the best. So we have that whole section, guys. So now you don't have to be mixed up on like, oh man, what was I supposed to ask? Is it option 1 for whole life or is it for universal? It's all there. And so it'll make it a lot easier for you guys to be able to go through and collect the information that you actually need from the policy. So here, the next section, after you figure out if they don't have coverage or if they do have coverage, sometimes we'll go through, in the past we were using DIME to figure out and address how much coverage somebody needs and what their needs are. But now we're using the theory of decreasing responsibility to do that. So there's specific questions throughout this slide that we're now going through to collect data to help them paint a picture of how much coverage that they may need. So here we have assets. If you were to estimate rough numbers, how much would you have saved up total? Emergency funds, what do you have saved there? Including retirement as well. If anything were to happen to you, would you want to set money aside for your kids' college education? What are their names again, right? You have their names. How old are they? If you were to pass away, would you want all of your debt and mortgage to be taken care of? Yes. If you were to write a check to erase it all, how much would that be? $300,000 with the mortgage. Great. Expenses on a monthly, how much would you need to take care of all of your monthly expenses? And then how much total income would you need to be replaced? Those questions are important there, because that's how you're gonna, as a trainer, once you become experienced, you have to have discernment on how you help them calculate how much coverage they need. So if their expenses and income don't match up, you want to be careful about how you calculate it. We use sometimes the 10 times rule to figure that number out. But sometimes it's more so going to be based on how much they can afford, which we're going to get to in a second. But you want to ask these questions to kind of know where they're at. This is great data collection, and it also puts things into perspective for them as well. Do we have? Okay. Yes, Costanza, these data collections are on the drive as well. But so then now we're transitioning. We have all of the information. We want to go through the closing process, which it says here, car and home replacement example. Some people don't know what that is, but Shaq basically says, hey, if you have car insurance, homeowners insurance, and something happens to your car or home, how much of it would you want to be replaced? It's a funny question, but everyone's gonna be like, well, all of it, of course, right? Well, exactly. If something were to happen to you, how much of your income would you want your family to have? They should say all of it, right? And wouldn't it make sense to use just 2% of your income to protect 100% of your income for your family? Of course, right? And so now you're going through and you're checking off all of these answers, right? These are more commitments. So then you want to go back down to figuring out their budget range, right? So how much could you each put towards this on a monthly to make sure your family's properly protected? You have the client, the Josh may pick 75 to 100, and then Lilix may say, okay, well, 50 to 75. Okay, and so let me explain this. Why do we have two columns here, 39 and below and 40 and above? Well, because when you're quoting people that are older, you can't give them the same ranges. They're not going to be able to get any type of coverage for $25 to $50 a month. So if they're over a certain age, then your quotes need to start a little bit higher in the options that you're giving them. And that's come from discernment as well. Now, sometimes this isn't as critical if they have a policy already. If they do, then now you're just trying to compare what they're already paying now and what we can offer. And obviously, if it's cheaper, that's great. So if someone's already paying $300 a month, you're not going to ask them, can you set aside $25 to $50? No, just go off of what they are already paying. So this is critical. If they don't have any coverage, you still want to ask these ranges. Then it gives you a little, would it be stressful on your budget? No. Then it tells you right here in red what to do, because a lot of times my new trainers, they don't know if they should quote and try to apply that night or if they should do a carryback. So it tells you right here what the situations may be, right? And it tells you kind of a little bit where to go. We can find an option that fits within that range and is smarter in every way. Would there be anything that prevents you from making a change or taking the application today? If we can, would there be anything that prevents you? I don't know why I checked. Yes, it should be no. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So yeah, so that's there. And then sometimes the client says, well, yeah, I would love to apply, but can I submit it on Friday? That's just when I get paid. Great. Now you have a spot to write that in as well. Underwriting, guys, I'm not going to read all of these questions, but you want to get really good at asking underwriting questions. I've gotten into many situations where you just ask the simple things, you get to the application, then they start divulging their whole life about various situations that you didn't know about before, which that's important because we need to know if it's going to be COD or not. You don't want to set a carryback saying, oh yeah, I got a $150 commitment. Then you get back to actually doing the application and they're like, oh, well, yeah, I was on this certain type of medication 5 years ago. And you didn't find that out on the front end. So it's critical to get all that information. You have a spot to put your triplicate of choice, obviously which one they actually select. And then you go to the process close. The updated form of our data collection right under the quotes there, it's going to have the steps to the process close. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. This one didn't have it, but we did update it. So it has all of these steps listed out. So you know that's the next thing that you go into. So guys, that's the last thing I'm going to go over today. I'm not going to go into retirement. There is a section for all of the retirement questions as well. But I did want, obviously Josh is going to be going through whole life as well. So try to be thorough. Hopefully you guys took a lot of notes, but we're going to transition now and